Your body felt something before you clicked. Not a thought, not a decision. Something beneath both of those things. A pull, a recognition, a sensation that moved through you before your mind had time to name it. And that sensation, that exact feeling happening in your body right now, is precisely what this transmission is here to explain. Because something far more intelligent than any diet plan already started recalibrating your body. And it started without asking your permission. Not when you pressed play. Not when you found this video. Before that. Days before that. Maybe weeks. And your body has been trying to tell you in the only language it has available. Discomfort. Rejection. Confusion. Exhaustion. Signals so specific that no doctor could fully explain them and no diet book could solve them. Because this is not a problem at the level of food. This is a recalibration at the level of frequency. And for the next several minutes, everything you have been feeling but could not explain is going to make complete sense for the first time. Stay with this. Because what moves through here is not information you consume once and forget. It is the kind of knowing that settles into your cells and does not leave. The kind your body has been waiting for longer than you realize. Let's start with what you have actually been experiencing. Because before any framework, before any transmission, before anything else, what matters most right now is that you feel genuinely seen in what your body has been going through. Not diagnosed, not managed. Seen. There is a food you used to love. Maybe it was something you grew up with. Something that carried memory and comfort and a feeling of being home. And at some point in the last year or two, you ate it. And something was different. Not dramatically different. Not allergic reaction different. Something quieter and more confusing than that. It sat in your body wrong. Like wearing someone else's clothes. Technically fits, but nothing about it feels like yours anymore. And you brushed it off the first time. You told yourself you were tired or stressed or that something else was off. But then it happened again and again. And now you stand in front of that food and something in you just says no. Not loudly, just clearly. A closed door where there used to be an open one. That is not an allergy developing. That is your system communicating in the clearest way it knows how. And then there is the bloating. Not the kind that makes sense after a heavy meal. The kind that arrives without obvious cause. The kind that sits just below your sternum, above your navel. In that specific region that feels tight and pressurized in a way that does not respond to anything you have tried. You have changed what you eat. You have tried removing things, adding things, timing things differently. And sometimes it gets better for a while, and then it comes back, or it shifts into something else, or a new food that seems safe suddenly becomes a problem. And you start to wonder if your body is simply turning against itself. It is not, but we will get there. There are meals now that leave you exhausted in a way that has no proportion to what you consumed. Not the heavy sleepiness of overeating. Something more like signal interference. Like your system spent enormous resources on something other than converting food into energy. You eat something simple, something that should be fine. And an hour later you feel like you have been running invisible marathons inside your own body. And no one around you seems to understand it because they ate the same thing and feel nothing unusual. That gap, the gap between your experience and what the people around you can perceive, is one of the loneliest parts of this. Because you have tried to describe it. You have sat across from practitioners who ran tests and found nothing conclusive, or found something minor that explained 10% of what you were feeling and left the other 90% unnamed. You have watched faces go politely blank when you tried to articulate that this is not just physical, that there is something else underneath it. Something you cannot locate in standard medical language, but can feel with absolute certainty. You are not imagining it. You are not being dramatic. You are not too sensitive or too anxious or too focused on your symptoms. You are operating a system that has crossed a threshold. And on the other side of that threshold, the old inputs simply do not integrate the way they used to. There are also cravings that confuse you. Not cravings for indulgent things. Strange pulls toward specific textures, toward raw things, toward foods that feel alive in a way you cannot intellectually explain. A sudden instinctual draw toward things that carry moisture and light, and something that feels almost like information. While simultaneously, foods that used to feel satisfying now feel like filling space without actually nourishing anything. Like consuming volume without receiving substance. And there are stretches, sometimes hours, sometimes longer, where hunger simply does not arrive. Not because you are not in need of fuel, but because your body seems to be waiting. As if it is holding out for something it knows exists but cannot yet locate in what is currently available. And that waiting does not feel like loss of appetite in the medical sense. It feels like discernment. Like your system knows the difference between eating and being nourished and is no longer willing to accept one while pretending it is the other. If you are nodding right now, even internally, something in you just recognized itself. And that recognition is the beginning of something that has nothing to do with managing symptoms and everything to do with understanding what is actually happening inside you at a level that diet culture and digestive health protocols were never designed to reach. Here is where the science becomes important. Not to replace the deeper knowing you already have, but to build a bridge between what your body is experiencing and why it makes complete sense that it is experiencing it. Your enteric nervous system is a network of approximately 100 million neurons. It lines your gastrointestinal tract from your esophagus all the way to your colon. Neuroscientists call it the second brain. They mean that structurally, not metaphorically. This system operates independently of the brain in your skull. It processes information, regulates function, and communicates bidirectionally through the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in the human body. The vagus nerve is also the primary neural corridor for the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response. The precise physiological state your body requires to actually integrate what it receives rather than simply process it mechanically. Your enteric nervous system produces approximately 95% of your body's serotonin. Most people associate serotonin with mood, with the brain, with mental health. But the majority of it lives in your gut, which means your digestive system is not just breaking down food. It is continuously generating the neurochemical environment that determines how safe you feel, how coherent your thoughts are, how emotionally regulated you can remain, and how open or closed your system is to receiving new information, new frequency, new input of any kind. This is not alternative science. This is published research available in mainstream neuroscience literature. The gut-brain axis is one of the most significant areas of scientific investigation happening right now. And what researchers are beginning to map is that this second brain responds to far more than chemical composition of food. It responds to information density. It responds to biological complexity. It responds to something that the leading edge of biophysics research is beginning to measure and call biophotonic emission. Living cells emit light. Not visible light to the naked eye. Measurable, quantifiable photonic emission that carries structured information. Foods that are still biologically alive, that have not been stripped of their cellular architecture through industrial processing, carry coherent biophotonic signatures. And your enteric nervous system, your second brain, is sensitive to that coherence in ways that standard nutritional science has not yet fully mapped, but that your body has been reading your entire life. What is changing now is not the sensitivity itself. What is changing is the threshold. The resolution at which your system detects frequency information in what you consume has increased. And as that resolution increases, the gap between what carries coherent, biophotonic information and what carries none becomes impossible for your body to ignore. This is what the Arcturian understanding of consciousness describes as Lightbody dietary recalibration. And before we go further into that framework, it is worth pausing on what that phrase actually means at its most grounded level. Lightbody does not mean something separate from your physical body. It refers to the electromagnetic and biophotonic architecture that your physical body both generates and depends on. Every cell in your body emits and receives light-based information. Your nervous system runs on electrical signals. Your heart generates the largest electromagnetic field of any organ in your body, measurable several feet outside your skin. You are not just a biological system. You are a bioelectric, biophotonic, electromagnetic system. And that system has a diet. Not just the diet of food, but the diet of everything it takes and attempts to integrate: light, sound, information, frequency. And the coherence of all of those things determines how well the physical body can function, repair, generate energy, and sustain clarity. What the Arcturian Council of Consciousness observes, from a position of civilizational awareness that extends beyond the time frame of recorded human history, is that Earth's electromagnetic environment is currently undergoing measurable change. The Schumann resonance, the baseline electromagnetic frequency of Earth's ionospheric cavity, has been registering spikes of unusual intensity and frequency over recent years. These are documented. They are measurable. They are not disputed in the scientific community as events. What is debated is their source and their significance. From the Arcturian observational position, these spikes are not geological noise. They are coordinated pulses of upgraded electromagnetic information moving through the planetary field. And for biological systems, specifically human biological systems that carry a particular energetic template, these pulses interact directly with the electromagnetic architecture of the body. What this creates specifically in souls whose consciousness has crossed a particular threshold of expansion is a growing incompatibility between the frequency of their expanding energetic template and the frequency of the inputs their physical body has been calibrated to process. Not incompatibility with life. Incompatibility with density. The system begins to reject what it can no longer integrate without distortion. And the first place this rejection registers in the physical body is in the enteric nervous system, in the gut. In that second brain that has always been reading more information than the mind could consciously process. The bloating is not malfunction. The inexplicable aversions are not disorder. The exhaustion after meals is not weakness. These are communications from a system that is doing something extraordinary. And those communications are asking for one thing. Not elimination diets. Not supplements, not more discipline around food choices. They are asking for understanding, for a framework that matches the actual level at which the change is happening. Because you cannot solve a frequency recalibration with a caloric adjustment. That is not where this is originating. Before we go into the deeper layers of this, there is something I need to ask you to do. Not for the transmission. For you, drop your shoulders. Genuinely. Let them fall away from your ears. Unclench your jaw. If you have been holding your face in concentration, let it soften. Place one hand, your dominant hand, flat against your body just below your sternum. Right at the upper center of your abdomen. Feel the warmth of your own palm against that place. Now notice, without trying to change anything, whatever is already there. Tightness. A guarded quality. A kind of holding that has been there so long you stop noticing it was a choice. A subtle congestion, like something that wants to move but has been waiting for permission. This center, this specific region beneath your sternum, is where physical intake meets energetic assimilation. In every major wisdom tradition that has mapped the subtle body, this region is identified as the primary processing center for identity, discernment, coherence, and personal power. In the Arcturian framework, it is understood as the precise interface point between your physical digestive system and your etheric template. The place where what enters the body gets evaluated not just chemically but energetically. Where your system makes a determination below conscious awareness about whether what it has received can be integrated without distortion or whether it introduces interference into the field. That center has been working extraordinarily hard for a very long time, trying to translate between two systems that are increasingly operating at different frequencies. The physical world with its dense inputs and its outdated nutritional frameworks, and your expanding energetic template with its increasing sensitivity and its growing need for coherent fuel. Breathe into your hand right now. Let the inhale expand your belly outward against your palm. On the exhale, simply allow. Not effort, not release as a performance. Just permission. You do not have to figure out anything in this moment. You do not have to understand the full mechanism or plan your next dietary change, or wonder what this means for your morning routine. The analytical mind is extraordinary, and it will have its moment. But right now we are not in the analytical mind. We are in the body. In that second brain that has been trying to reach you through every symptom you have been experiencing. And it does not speak in logic. It speaks in sensation. In yes and no. In open and closed. In light and heavy. In aligned and not. Let it speak. Just for a moment. Without the filter of what makes sense or what you can explain to someone else. What does that center feel right now, beneath your hand? Whatever you notice, that is real data. That is your system communicating. And what this transmission is here to do is teach you how to read that language with precision. not as a spiritual metaphor, but as a functional skill that will change your relationship with your own body permanently. Here is the first thing you need to understand about what is actually happening in your body right now. Your relationship with food has never been just about food. From the first moment of your existence, the act of receiving nourishment was simultaneously a physical event and an energetic one. Your body was always reading more than nutrients. It was reading safety. It was reading coherence. It was reading whether what it received matched the frequency of its current state or created dissonance within it. For most of your life, the discrepancy between what your body could truly integrate and what it was given to process was small enough that your system could compensate. It could work around the mismatch. It could absorb the distortion and continue functioning without flagging it loudly. But as your energetic template expands, as your consciousness crosses threshold after threshold of awareness, that compensation capacity decreases. Not because your body is getting weaker, because your sensitivity is increasing. And increased sensitivity means increased precision. And increased precision means increased intolerance of distortion. This is why the symptoms appeared gradually. This is why there was no single moment of dramatic change, but rather a slow accumulation of signals over months and years that eventually became impossible to attribute to anything other than something fundamental shifting in the way your system processes reality. And here is what makes this different from every dietary framework you have ever encountered. There is no fixed list of foods to eat or avoid. There is no protocol to follow. There is no elimination phase followed by a reintroduction phase followed by a maintenance phase. Because what your body can integrate is not static. It is dynamic. It changes as you change. It evolves as your frequency evolves. What served your system 6 months ago may not serve it now. What creates distortion today may be perfectly integrable in 3 months. Because the recalibration is not moving toward a fixed destination. It is continuously refining toward greater coherence. And coherence is not a state you arrive at. It is a direction you move in. This is why following someone else's diet, even someone whose experience sounds exactly like yours, produces only partial results. Because their recalibration is calibrated to their specific energetic template. And your template is yours alone. No two are identical. What this transmission is offering you is not a new set of rules to follow. It is the ability to read your own system's language clearly enough that you never need external rules again. The second layer of what is happening goes beyond food entirely. And this is where many people begin to feel a kind of vertigo, because the scope of what is changing becomes larger than expected. Your body is not only becoming more selective about what it consumes as food, it is becoming more selective about what it consumes as experience, as information, as energy from other people, environments, and situations. You may have already noticed this even if you have not connected it to the same recalibration. There are conversations that leave you depleted in a way that has no proportion to their content. There are environments where you walk in feeling one way and walk out feeling completely different, and not in a direction you chose. There are people whose presence used to feel neutral and now feels like something your system actively needs to recover from. And there are other people, perhaps new to your life or suddenly more resonant in it, whose presence feels like the energetic equivalent of drinking clean water after a long thirst. This is the same recalibration expressing itself at every level of intake simultaneously. Because your body is not separating food from information, from energy, from experience. It is reading all of it through the same upgraded sensitivity. The same biophotonic electromagnetic frequency detecting intelligence that is now detecting the absence of light in processed food, is also detecting incoherence in environments, distortion in certain communication dynamics, and the presence or absence of genuine resonance in relationships. This can feel overwhelming. And there is a specific kind of grief that comes with it that rarely gets named. Because as your system refines, you find yourself naturally moving away from things, people, foods, habits, environments that once defined your daily life. And even when the movement feels right, even when your body is clearly communicating that these things no longer align, the mind holds memories. It holds identity. It holds the version of yourself that was built around the patterns that are now dissolving. And letting go of that version, even voluntarily, even when you can feel the rightness of it, carries a weight that deserves to be acknowledged. You are not losing yourself, but you are losing a version of yourself, and that version was real. It mattered. It carried you to this exact threshold. Honoring it does not mean returning to it. It means recognizing what it contributed before allowing it to complete its role in your story. The third layer is where the real power of this recalibration begins to reveal itself. And it is the layer that no dietary framework, no medical model, and no standard spiritual teaching touches directly. As your system becomes more coherent, something begins to happen in your relationship with time, with decision-making, with knowing. The constant internal negotiation that most people experience around food, around choices, around what is right for them in any given moment, begins to quiet. Not because you have more information, but because your body's signal-to-noise ratio has improved so dramatically that the signal becomes unmistakable. You walk towards something and your system says yes or no with a clarity that bypasses analysis entirely. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a precision that makes extended deliberation feel unnecessary. You look at a plate of food and somewhere beneath conscious thought, before any nutritional calculation can begin, your body has already registered its response. Aligned or not, coherent or not, nourishing at the level this system now requires, or occupying space without genuinely feeding anything. This is not intuition in the loose sense people use that word. This is a calibrated biological intelligence operating at its designed capacity. Your enteric nervous system, now being supported and refined by the Arcturian recalibration moving through your etheric template, is functioning as the precision instrument it was always meant to be. Not a system to be managed with external protocols, but a living intelligence to be listened to and trusted as the primary authority on what your particular body, with its particular energetic template, in its particular phase of expansion, actually needs in any given moment. And as you begin to trust this, something shifts in your entire relationship with nourishment. The fear dissolves. The constant monitoring dissolves. The guilt dissolves. Not because you stop caring about what you consume, but because caring becomes effortless. Caring becomes automatic. Your system guides you with such clarity that the question of what to eat becomes as simple as the question of which direction is forward. You just know. And that knowing is so different from following rules that it almost does not fit in the same category of experience. If right now, after everything that has moved through this transmission, something in you feels seen in a way that you did not fully expect, and if that seeing feels like relief more than surprise, go to the comments right now and type 33. Not as a social media gesture, as an acknowledgement to yourself, as a moment of saying out loud in any form available to you that you recognize what has been happening in your body, that you are no longer willing to call it confusion or disorder or something to be managed, that you understand, perhaps for the first time, that your body has been exactly right all along. It has been communicating with extraordinary precision, and you are finally receiving the transmission it has been sending. Type 33 and then come back, because there is something specific and actionable that needs to happen in the next 72 hours. Here is what the Arcturian Council indicates about the integration window that follows a transmission of this frequency. The hours immediately after receiving this kind of knowing are the most important for anchoring what has shifted. Not because the shift will disappear if you do not act, but because action taken from fresh alignment creates grooves. It builds a new normal. And that new normal becomes the foundation from which everything else evolves. So here is what the next 72 hours look like. Not as rules, as invitations from your own system. Before every meal for the next 3 days, pause. Not for long. 30 seconds is enough. Place your hand on your solar plexus, that center beneath your sternum that has been carrying so much. Take one breath that reaches the bottom of your lungs. And then, without reaching for any framework or any external guidance, ask your body one simple question. Is this aligned with where I am right now? And then listen. Not for a verbal answer, for a physical one. Something that opens or something that closes. Something that moves toward or something that subtly withdraws. Your body will answer. It has always answered. What is different now is that you have context for what the answer means. And context transforms signal into language. You do not have to change what you eat today. You do not have to throw away anything in your kitchen or immediately restructure your meals. or begin any new protocol. What matters in this window is not change. It is awareness. Because awareness precedes sustainable change by exactly as much time as it takes your system to fully trust that the awareness is consistent. The moment your body believes that you are genuinely listening, that you will not override its signals the way you have been trained to override them your entire life, it will begin communicating more clearly, more specifically, more helpfully. The relationship changes. From you managing your body to you and your body navigating this recalibration together. The second thing for these 72 hours is hydration beyond what feels necessary. This is both practical and energetic. The cellular recalibration happening in your physical body right now requires water as a conductivity medium. Your cells communicate electrically. That communication requires a hydrated environment to function at the resolution your expanding system now demands. But beyond simple cellular hydration, water carries something that becomes increasingly significant as your sensitivity increases. Structured water, water whose molecular geometry has not been disrupted by pressure, chemical treatment, or electromagnetic interference, carries a coherent electromagnetic signature that your upgrading system can use as information rather than simply as hydration medium. Spring water, filtered water that has been allowed to sit in natural light. Water you hold in your hands for a moment before drinking, allowing your body's electromagnetic field to interact with it before you consume it. These are not superstitions. They are applications of biophysics that are well within the documented literature of water science. Your body knows the difference. And in this window, give it the best conductivity medium available. The third thing is rest without apology. Whatever fatigue arrives in the next 72 hours, let it be answered with rest. Your mitochondria, the organelles in every cell of your body responsible for energy production, are undergoing an upgrade in their capacity to process biophotonic fuel rather than relying exclusively on caloric conversion. That process requires the system to reduce its other operations temporarily. It requires stillness. It requires the physiological equivalent of a software installation that needs the active programs to pause while something more fundamental rewrites itself at the root level. Sleep when sleep arrives. Sit quietly when quiet arrives. Move when your body asks for movement, but without pushing against the rest signals that will come. This is not laziness. This is intelligent stewardship of a system doing something that most people on this planet have never consciously supported in themselves. Now there is something that needs to be said directly about the journey that brought you here. Because the path to this moment was not simple. You have spent time, money, energy, and significant emotional resources trying to solve something that the available frameworks were never equipped to solve. Every elimination diet you tried was sincere. Every appointment with a practitioner who helped you partially and could not explain why not fully was not wasted. Every morning of journaling your food and your symptoms, trying to find a pattern that would unlock the mystery, was not pointless. All of it was necessary. Not because those approaches contained the answer, but because working through them built something in you. A specific kind of readiness. A particular quality of receptivity that comes only from having genuinely exhausted every available explanation. And arrived at the undeniable conclusion that the explanation must exist at a level you have not yet had access to. That readiness is what this transmission was calibrated to meet. You were not late to this understanding. You arrived at the precise moment your system was prepared to integrate it without distortion. Earlier would have felt interesting but not embodied. This moment is different. You can feel the difference in your body right now, between information you understand intellectually and knowing that has landed at a cellular level. This is the second, and cellular knowing does not require reinforcement. It does not require you to review this transmission repeatedly to maintain its effect. It has already changed the architecture of how your system reads its own signals. That change is not undoable. It does not require maintenance. It requires only that you continue choosing to listen to what your body now knows how to communicate more clearly than it ever has before. There is one more thing that this recalibration is preparing you for that extends beyond your personal experience. And it is important that you understand this, not as a spiritual ego boost, but as a practical reality that will explain something you are likely to begin noticing in the people around you. As your internal field becomes more coherent, it begins to influence the field around you. This is not mystical. It is electromagnetic. Human beings generate measurable electromagnetic fields. Those fields interact. When one system is operating at a high degree of internal coherence, other systems in proximity are influenced by that coherence. Not by being told anything, not by any effort on your part to change them. Simply by the mathematics of electromagnetic field interaction. Coherence is physically contagious. And as you stabilize in this recalibration, you will notice it. People around you will seem calmer without knowing why. Conversations in your presence will resolve more easily than they would elsewhere. Situations that you walk into carrying internal coherence will move differently than they moved before. Not because you are doing anything, because you are being something. And being something coherent in an environment that carries significant distortion has an effect that requires no action on your part to produce. This is part of why this recalibration matters beyond the personal. The collective field of human consciousness is shifting. It requires individuals who are willing to undergo the discomfort of internal reorganization in order to hold a point of coherence within a system that is still largely operating in patterns of distortion. You are becoming one of those points. Not through spiritual achievement, not through years of practice, through willingness, through having listened to your body long enough and searched honestly enough and remained open enough to recognize this moment for what it is. That does not make you special in a way that separates you from others. It makes you responsible in a way that connects you to something much larger than your individual experience. Your coherence ripples. Your alignment has range. And the more you honor this recalibration by listening to your body, choosing nourishment over habit, and allowing the old patterns to complete their cycle without clinging to them, the more effectively you occupy that point of coherence that the collective field is asking you to hold. You were never broken. The confusion you carried was not a sign of inadequacy. It was the experience of a system that had outgrown the available explanations, of a frequency that had expanded beyond the frameworks designed to contain it, of a body that knew something that the surrounding world had not yet developed language for. The language exists now. The framework is here. The knowing has landed. And from this point forward, every time you pause before a meal and listen, every time you choose rest without guilt, every time you honor the signal your body sends even when it is inconvenient, you are sending a message to your body that you value and appreciate. Even when no one around you understands it, even when the logical mind wants to override it with familiar habit. Every single one of those moments is a vote for the version of you that this recalibration has been building toward. The version that does not seek alignment, the version that lives it. The version that no longer experiences the gap between who it is and how it operates. Because that gap has closed. Internally. At the level that changes everything without requiring you to announce it, perform it, or prove it to anyone. The only question that remains is not whether this is real. Your body already answered that the moment something in you recognized itself in this transmission. The only question is how consciously and how consistently you choose to move with what you now know. That choice is yours. It will always be yours. And the beautiful precision of this recalibration is that it does not force that choice. It simply makes everything else increasingly difficult to ignore. Until alignment becomes not a spiritual aspiration but the most natural, most effortless, most obvious way to exist. What comes next in this sequence addresses something that thousands of people undergoing this same recalibration begin to notice within days of the dietary shift beginning. A change in their relationship with water that precedes any conscious decision to modify their hydration. A growing sensitivity to the source, the structure, and the electromagnetic quality of the water they consume, that their bodies are registering before their minds have formed a single thought about it. The vagus nerve, the primary neural corridor through which your expanding system is learning to receive and integrate higher frequency information, has a specific and documented relationship with hydration that becomes critical at this stage of recalibration. And what the Arcturian Council has prepared in the next transmission addresses this relationship with a precision that will explain experiences you have not yet connected to this process. But that your body has already been filing under the same category as everything else you felt before you clicked. Real, undeniable, and waiting for a framework that finally fits.